Okay, so get this. A man in Alaska, Panos Anastasiou, is facing charges for, like, threatening Supreme Court justices. And it gets even crazier when you get why he was so angry. This isn't just some guy, like, sending a mean letter. This deep dive, it goes deep into presidential power and free speech and how do we keep public officials safe when things feel, like, totally crazy right now.
Yes, like everything's so intense right now. This case really shows that.
Totally. And so we're looking at this Washington Post article about this Anastasia guy. And let me tell you, he did not hold back like hundreds of messages. And a lot of them,
Yeah.
straight up threats, talking about specific justices, even their families.
Wow.
Yeah, he's like using words like lynch and tortured, even mentioning AR-15s. It's scary stuff.
That's really scary. And the thing is, this isn't just some random thing, The Attorney General, like, he's been saying there are way more threats against people in government now. There's a whole task force now just to deal with it. Can you imagine being a judge or even just on the city council or something, trying to do your job with that hanging over you? It just, like, breaks down how our whole democracy is supposed to work.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got this super tense situation, right? In the Supreme Court, they make these rulings on presidential immunity. And this seems to be what set Anastasius off, these decisions about Trump and his lawsuits. Whether a president can be held responsible for stuff they do while in office. It's like his anger came from this feeling that the system is rigged.
It's true. This case really opens up this huge question of how much power should a president have? And what are the limits? Because immunity, it's supposed to protect them from getting sued for things they do as part of their job, right? So they can focus on running the country and not be distracted by lawsuits all the time. But then, what if what they did is really bad, maybe even criminal? Should they be protected from that? It's a tough question.
Yeah, it really makes you think. And the thing is, this isn't just some abstract law school debate. It has real consequences.
Oh, absolutely. It always comes back to the real world, and historically, it's been really messy how presidential immunity gets used. There have been times when it's protected presidents from investigations that were totally legitimate. Like maybe they really did abuse their power, and that just makes people trust the system less, which makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And then you've got this guy, Anastasiou. He's like this extreme example of that tension, right? So you're saying there's this system. It's meant to protect how the presidency works, but it could be used the wrong way. It's like a lose-lose.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And the courts, they've been arguing about this forever. I mean, think about Nixon, right? Watergate, the whole country was freaking out.
Yeah.
And even though he quit before they could, like, charge him with anything, people still debate if a president can be charged for things they did in office.
Wow. Yeah, history's full of examples where it's not clear, right?
Mhm.
And you can see how that plays into this Anastasia case for sure. And think about today. Everything's so politically divided. Social media, the news, it's like constant. And a lot of it's not even true. It creates this pressure cooker where it's like people feel like their beliefs are under attack. So they lose faith in, the government, the courts, the whole system.
And then that's where free speech comes in, right? Like, we're allowed to disagree, to criticize the government, even to be mad at it. But when does that become dangerous? You know what I mean?
Right. That is the question, the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And every democracy has to figure it out. Free speech is huge, so important, but it's not like a free-for-all. That's why we have laws against, like, inciting violence, making threats that seem real, causing panic. We got to find that balance.
Yeah.
Protecting what individuals can say, but also keeping everyone safe.
Right. Totally. So where does this Anastasia guy fit into that? I mean, he obviously took it too far, but it seems like it came from this frustration, like the system is rigged, people in power don't play by the same rules.
Exactly. It gets so complicated there.
Yeah.
Because you've got someone who might have committed a crime. Those threats were serious.
Yeah.
But then there's this whole background of, like, people feeling like politics are hopeless. They don't trust the government. It's a mess.
So where do we even go from here? Like, how do we keep people safe? The people in government, the judges, everyone, but also protect our rights. How do we do both?
It's a huge question. No easy answers. Right? We have the legal side, like actually enforcing the laws against making threats, holding people accountable. But that's not enough, is it?
Right. Just arresting people won't fix the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have to deal with all that other stuff we talked about, the reasons this is happening. Like, people need to trust the government again. We need to be able to talk to each other even when we disagree. And we got to stop all this misinformation. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire.
Totally. And that feels impossible these days, right? With social media and all that, it's like everyone's in their own little bubble.
It's hard, for sure. But I think it starts with, like, teaching people how to think critically. How to tell if something's biased, how to have a real conversation without yelling, even if you disagree.
So it's more about finding common ground than, like, winning the argument.
Exactly.
Right.
And that takes work. We all have to be willing to listen, really listen, even to stuff that makes us mad. And remember that we don't know everything. Nobody does.
This whole case, it's terrifying, but it's also like a wake-up call. It shows us what's at risk here. Our whole system can fall apart if we don't trust each other.
Absolutely. It reminds us that democracy is precious. It takes work to keep it going, especially when it's hard.
So true. Well, on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. What would you do if you were in charge? How would you protect our leaders, but also our freedoms? It's a question we all got to think about because the answer matters to all of us.